Story 1. The Mirror Convoy. Marcus Webb had been hauling freight across the American Midwest for 17 years. And in all that time, he developed an almost supernatural sense for the road. He knew which rest stops had the cleanest showers, which way stations were most likely to wave him through, and which stretches of highway turned treacherous when the weather shifted. On the night of October 14th, 2019, Marcus was running a load of industrial machinery from Chicago to Denver along Interstate 80, a route he'd driven so many times he could practically do it with his eyes closed. The autumn night was clear, with a half-moon casting silver light across the cornfields of Iowa. Marcus had left the Chicago distribution center at 6 p.m., planning to make it to the truck stop outside Des Moines by midnight. Traffic was light, just the occasional car passing the opposite direction, and a few scattered trucks heading west like he was. His CB radio crackled with the usual chatter, drivers warning about speed traps, weather conditions, and complaining about dispatch. Around 10:30 p.m., somewhere between Iowa City and Des Moines, Marcus noticed headlights in his mirrors. Another semi, running the same direction, about a quarter-mile back. Nothing unusual about that. Trucks often ended up traveling in loose formations along major interstates, especially at night when traffic thinned out. But as the minutes passed, Marcus noticed something odd. The truck behind him maintained an exact distance, never getting closer, never falling back, matching his speed perfectly. Marcus adjusted his cruise control, dropping from 68 to 65 miles per hour. The truck behind him slowed proportionally, maintaining that same quarter-mile gap. He sped back up to 70. The truck behind matched him again. Marcus keyed his CB radio. "Hey there, driver behind me on 80 westbound, mile marker 221. You running to Des Moines?" Static answered him. He tried again. "This is the Freightliner hauling machinery. Calling the truck on my 6. You got your ears on?" Nothing but the soft hiss of empty channels. Marcus tried to get a better look at the truck in his mirrors. The headlights were bright, modern LED arrays, but he couldn't make out the make or model. The truck seemed to shimmer slightly in his mirrors, as if heat waves were distorting the image, though the October night was cool. He'd been driving long enough to know that sometimes mirrors played tricks in the dark, reflections catching odd angles. But this felt different. He decided to let the truck pass. Marcus eased off the accelerator, dropping down to 60, then 55. Most trucks would blow past him at that speed, eager to make time, but the truck behind him slowed as well, maintaining that exact quarter-mile distance. Marcus felt the first cold finger of unease trace down his spine. He keyed the CB again, cycling through all the common channels. "Any driver westbound on 80, you seen a convoy out here? I got a truck pacing me, and he ain't responding." A voice crackled back, thick with a southern accent. "This is Roadmaster heading eastbound, just past marker 225. Didn't see nothing but you, friend. Road's empty out here tonight." Marcus glanced at his GPS. He'd just passed marker 223. The truck that just answered should have seen both of them. "You sure?" Marcus asked. "I got company. Bright LED headlights, about a quarter-mile back." "Negative, friend. Just saw your rig. You're alone out there." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. He looked in his mirror again. The truck was still there, headlights burning bright, maintaining that impossible, perfect distance. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Ahead, he saw an exit sign, rest area, 2 miles. Marcus decided he needed to get off the highway, maybe splash some water on his face, check his mirrors for dirt or damage that might be causing some kind of optical illusion. He put on his turn signal and began to slow for the exit. The truck behind him put on its turn signal too. Marcus could see it clearly in his mirror, the amber light blinking in perfect synchronization with his own. His heart began to hammer in his chest. He took the exit, the ramp curving away from the interstate. The truck followed, maintaining that exact distance, as if connected by an invisible tether. The rest area was nearly empty, just a couple cars in the parking lot and one RV. Marcus pulled into the truck parking section, choosing a spot under a bright sodium light. He stopped, put the truck in neutral, and set the air brake in his mirrors. The following truck pulled into a spot exactly parallel to his, the same distance away it had maintained on the highway. The headlights stayed on. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and opened his door, his boots hitting the pavement with a solid thunk. The October air was cold, carrying the smell of diesel and the faint sweetness of dying leaves. He walked toward the other truck, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. As he got closer, details began to emerge. It was a Freightliner, just like his. Same model year, from the look of it. Same paint scheme, red cab with silver trim. Marcus's breath caught. He played his flashlight along the side of the truck. There on the door was the same company logo that adorned his own rig. Below it, a truck number 847. Marcus's truck was number 847. His company only had about 30 trucks total. There shouldn't be another 847. He raised the flashlight to the cab. Through the windshield, he could see a figure sitting in the driver's seat. "Hey!" Marcus called out. "Hey, driver." The figure didn't move. Marcus walked closer, his footsteps echoing in the quiet rest area. He came around to the driver's side door and looked up. The figure in the cab wore a flannel shirt, brown and red plaid. Marcus was wearing a brown and red plaid flannel shirt. The figure wore a John Deere cap. Marcus reached up and touched his own head, feeling his John Deere cap. His hand trembling, Marcus shined his flashlight directly into the cab. The face that looked back at him was his own. Same square jaw, same 3-day stubble, same scar on the left cheek from a bicycle accident when he was 12. But the eyes were wrong. They were dark, completely black, like holes burned into a photograph. The Marcus thing in the truck smiled, and its teeth were too white, too many, filling his mouth like a shark's. Marcus stumbled backward, nearly falling. The Marcus thing raised its hand and waved slowly, mockingly. Marcus turned and ran for his truck, his heart slamming against his ribs. He hauled himself into the cab, slammed the door, and locked it. His hands shook so badly it took 3 tries to release the air brake. He threw the truck into gear and gunned the engine, the tires barking as he accelerated out of the parking spot. In his mirror, the other truck's headlights came on. It pulled out of its spot and followed him. Marcus roared out of the rest area and back onto the interstate, pushing his truck to 75, then 80 miles per hour. The other truck matched his speed, staying that same quarter mile back. Marcus grabbed his phone and tried to call 911, but there was no signal. The CB radio was dead, just empty static on every channel. For the next 40 miles, the truck followed him. Marcus tried everything, speeding up, slowing down, weaving between lanes when traffic permitted. Nothing worked. The mirror truck matched every movement exactly, as if it were his own reflection made solid and given chase. Marcus was crying now, hands white-knuckled on the wheel, his mind fracturing with the impossibility of what was happening. Then, just past mile marker 263, the truck behind him flashed its high beams 3 times. Marcus watched in his mirror, transfixed with horror. The truck accelerated, closing the distance between them. A quarter mile became an eighth, then 50 yards, then 20. Marcus could see it clearly now in the moonlight, an exact duplicate of his own truck, down to the dent in the left front fender from where he'd scraped a loading dock pole in Milwaukee. The truck pulled alongside him in the left lane. Marcus turned his head, unable to stop himself from looking. The other Marcus sat in the cab, no more than 10 feet away, driving parallel. The thing wore his face like a mask. It turned and looked at him, smiled that too wide smile, and mouthed 3 words, "I'm you now." Then the other truck accelerated and pulled ahead. Marcus watched it disappear into the darkness ahead of him, taillights dwindling to red pinpoints before vanishing completely. His CB radio crackled suddenly to life. The southern accented voice from earlier. Roadmaster to westbound Freightliner. You still out there, friend? You find out what was following you? Marcus grabbed the microphone with shaking hands. Yeah, he managed. Yeah, I'm here. It's gone now. Good deal. Say, what's your company? Saw a truck just like yours blow past my exit. Must have been doing 90. Same red and silver paint job. Marcus felt ice water flood his veins. What exit was that? Exit 271, the Des Moines bypass. Damn near ran a couple cars off the road. Driver looked like he'd lost his mind. Marcus pulled over at the next rest area. He called his dispatch, called his wife, called anyone who would answer. He told them about the mirror truck, about the thing wearing his face. Most people thought he'd fallen asleep at the wheel and had a nightmare. But 3 days later, another driver from his company, a guy named Phil Torrens, failed to show up for his scheduled pickup in Denver. They found Phil's truck abandoned at a rest area outside Des Moines, still running, driver's side door hanging open. Phil was never found. Marcus turned in his resignation 2 weeks later. He told his boss he was done with long haul, done with the night roads. He didn't tell him about the security footage from the rest area where Phil's truck was found. His boss had shown it to him, asking if Marcus had any idea what might have happened. The footage showed Phil's truck pulling in, parking, and Phil getting out. Then, a minute later, another truck pulled in behind it. Same make, same model, same paint job, same truck number. The footage showed 2 Phils. One ran, one followed. Then both trucks drove away. Marcus works at a warehouse now, never driving farther than the distance between his house and work. He sold his truck, broke his CB radio with a hammer, and refuses to drive at night. But sometimes when he's lying in bed, he hears the distant sound of a diesel engine idling outside his house. Sometimes he goes to the window and looks out at the street. And sometimes, parked under the streetlight, there's a red and silver Freightliner, number 847 on the door, with a figure sitting in the cab. A figure wearing a John Deere cap and a plaid flannel shirt. A figure that waves when it sees him watching. Marcus closes the curtains and tries to sleep. But he knows, eventually, the mirror will catch up. Story 2, The Backwards Mile. Sarah Chun had been driving trucks for 9 years, ever since she got out of the Army, and needed work that paid decent and kept her moving. She liked the solitude of the road, the way the hours could slip past in a meditative blur of white lines and mile markers. On March 3rd, 2021, she was hauling a refrigerated trailer full of frozen food from Portland, Oregon, to Boise, Idaho, running Interstate 84 through the Columbia River Gorge. It was a route she'd run dozens of times, familiar as her own driveway. The weather was typical for early March in the Pacific Northwest. Gray skies, threatening rain, temperature hovering just above freezing. Sarah had left Portland at 4 a.m., trying to beat the morning traffic. By 7 a.m., she was well into the gorge, the highway hugging the cliffs above the Columbia River. The scenery was beautiful even in the gray light. Forested mountains rising on both sides, the river steel gray and broad below. Sarah's phone rang through her truck's Bluetooth system. Her girlfriend, Maya. "Hey, babe," Sarah answered. "You making good time?" "Yeah, should be in Boise by 2 if the weather holds." "You still good for dinner Thursday?" "Absolutely. Listen, I'm about to go into a meeting, but I wanted to say I love you." "Love you too," Sarah said. "Talk tonight." The call disconnected. Sarah was passing mile marker 62 when she noticed something odd. Her GPS showed her location correctly, tracking along the blue line of Interstate 84. But something felt wrong. The scenery looked familiar, but inverted somehow. The rock formations on her left seemed like they should be on her right. The river, which should be on her right, appeared on her left. She shook her head, figuring her tired brain was playing tricks. Then she passed a mile marker sign. Mile marker 61. Sarah frowned. That wasn't right. She just passed 62. She must have read it wrong. But a minute later, another sign, mile marker 60. Her frown deepened. She checked her GPS. It showed her moving forward, tracking east toward Boise. The blue advanced along the highway line as it should, but the mile markers were going backward. Sarah keyed her CB radio. This is Frozen Express, eastbound on 84. Anyone else seeing something weird with the mile markers in the gorge? Static answered her. She tried again on a different channel. Any drivers on 84? This is a westbound reefer hauling frozen goods. You got your ears on? Her breath caught. She'd said westbound. She was heading eastbound, toward Boise. East. But the words had come out of her mouth wrong. She looked at her speedometer. It showed 65 miles per hour. Normal. Her engine temperature was normal. Fuel gauge showed 3/4 of a tank. Everything was fine, except the mile markers kept counting down. Mile marker 59. Mile marker 58. And the scenery was definitely backward. She recognized landmarks now, but they were mirrored. There was a distinctive waterfall at Mitchell Point, but it was on the wrong side of the highway. There was a tunnel through the rock face, but it curved the wrong direction. Sarah's hands began to sweat inside her gloves. She tried her phone. No signal. Even though there should be coverage throughout the gorge, she tried the CB again. Dead air on all channels. The highway ahead was empty. No other cars, no other trucks, nothing. Just the empty ribbon of asphalt, the backward scenery, and the mile markers counting down. Mile marker 57. Mile marker 56. Sarah realized with dawning horror that she was approaching mile marker 55. She'd passed that marker about 30 minutes ago, heading the other direction, but she hadn't turned around. She hadn't taken any exits. She'd driven straight the entire time. How could she be going backward? She looked in her mirrors. The highway stretched out behind her, empty, but it looked wrong too. The white line seemed to angle inward toward her truck, instead of receding into the distance. It made her eyes hurt to look at it, like trying to focus on an optical illusion. She snapped her eyes back to the road ahead. Mile marker 55 flashed past, then 54. Sarah's breath came faster. She was hyperventilating. She realized she forced herself to slow her breathing, using the technique she'd learned in the Army. Count to 4 breathing in, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. The panic receded slightly, replaced by a cold, focused clarity. She was in trouble. She didn't know what kind, but she needed to figure it out. She tried to think logically. If the mile markers were going backward, but her GPS showed her going forward, what did that mean? Were the markers wrong? Was the GPS wrong? Or was something else happening? She passed mile marker 53 and made a decision. At the next exit, she'd get off the highway, turn around, and head back to Portland. Cancel the delivery, claim mechanical problems, anything. She just needed to get out of this backward place. The exit sign appeared ahead. Rest area, 1 mile. Sarah put on her turn signal, though there was no one to signal to. She took the exit ramp, which curved to the right as it should. The rest area parking lot appeared, nestled against the hillside. Sarah pulled into a spot and set the air brake. She sat for a moment, hands shaking on the wheel, then opened her door and stepped out. The rest area was deserted. The visitor center building stood with its lights off. The vending machines were dark. Sarah walked to the map kiosk, a large board showing the highway route and point of interest. She found the star indicating the rest area's location, mile marker 52. She looked back at the highway. A sign clearly showed rest area, mile marker 52, but that was wrong. This rest area was at mile marker 70. She'd stopped here before many times. Sarah walked back to her truck, her boots loud on the pavement. The rest area was silent. No bird sounds, no wind, nothing. Just silence pressing like cotton in her ears. She climbed back into her cab and grabbed her logbook. She flipped to her current trip entry. Departed Portland for AM I-84 eastbound to Boise. The handwriting was hers, but below it, in the same handwriting, another entry she didn't remember writing. Departed Boise for I-84 westbound to Portland. Her hands went numb. She dropped the logbook. The pages fluttered, and she saw more entries in her handwriting. Entries she'd never written, trips she'd never made, deliveries to cities she'd never visited. And at the bottom of the page, a single sentence in her own handwriting. You're driving the wrong direction on the right road. Sarah grabbed her phone. Still no signal. She started the engine and pulled back onto the highway. She'd go to the next town, find help, find people. This was some kind of breakdown, some kind of hallucination. Maybe carbon monoxide from the engine, maybe a stroke. But she could figure out if she just kept moving. She merged back onto the highway, accelerating up to speed. The mile markers continued. 51, 50, 49. She was traveling backward through space, forward through time. Her GPS still showed her moving correctly toward Boise, but everything else contradicted it. After 15 more minutes, she saw a sign for the town of Cascade Locks. This was where she needed to turn around, head back west of Portland. But when she reached the exit, something was wrong. The sign was backward, like she was seeing in a mirror. The letters were reversed. Sarah felt her sanity starting to crack. She took the exit anyway, the ramp curving down toward the town. But the town wasn't there. Where buildings should have been, there was just empty space, like gaps in a smile. Streets went nowhere, ending abruptly in blank gray void. Sarah stopped the truck in the middle of the empty street. She got out and walked toward the nearest building, a gas station that looked normal from a distance. But as she got closer, she could see it was flat, two-dimensional, like a painted backdrop in a theater. She reached out and touched it. Her hand went through, feeling nothing but cold air. She ran back to her truck and climbed in. Her radio crackled suddenly to life. Her own voice came through the speaker. This is Frozen Express, eastbound on 84. Anyone else seeing something weird with the mile markers in the gorge? Sarah grabbed the microphone. Hello? This is Sarah Chun. I need help. Her own voice answered. This is Frozen Express, eastbound on 84. Anyone else seeing something weird with the mile markers in the gorge? The same words, exactly the same inflection. A recording, a loop. Sarah threw the microphone down. She put the truck in gear and drove back to the highway, back onto Interstate 84. The mile markers continued backward, 48, 47, 46. She drove for hours. The sun never moved in the sky, stuck at that early morning angle. Her fuel gauge never changed, stuck at 3/4 of a tank. The clock on her dashboard read 7:47 a.m. It never advanced. Mile marker 45. Mile marker 44. Sarah began to cry, tears running down her face. But she kept driving. What else could she do? Mile marker 30. Mile marker 20. She was approaching the western end of the gorge, getting closer to Portland. But she knew Portland wouldn't be there. Or would be there but wrong, backward, two-dimensional. Mile marker 10. Mile marker 5. Sarah saw something ahead on the highway. A truck stopped in the middle of the road. As she got closer, her blood turned to ice. It was a refrigerated trailer, same model as hers, same company logo. She pulled up behind it and stopped. The driver's door was hanging open. Sarah got out and approached the other truck. Inside the cab, sitting in the driver's seat, was a body. It was withered, mummified, wearing clothes that looked like they'd rotted over years. But Sarah recognized the jacket. It was hers. The same zipper pull, the same repair patch on the elbow. She stumbled backward, unable to scream. Her phone rang, the sound shocking in the silence. She pulled it from her pocket with shaking hands. Maya's name on the screen. She answered. Maya, Sarah, where are you? You were supposed to be here hours ago. Where am I supposed to be? Boise. Your delivery was scheduled for 2 p.m. It's almost 6. Your company's been trying to reach you. Sarah looked at her phone. The time read 5:47 p.m., but the sun was still in its morning position. Maya, something's wrong. Something happened on the highway. What happened? Are you okay? I don't know. The mile markers were going backward, and the town was empty, and I found... She looked back at the dead truck. It was gone. The highway was empty. Sarah, you're scaring me. Sarah turned in a circle. She was standing on the shoulder of Interstate 84. Normal traffic flowed past. Cars, trucks, everything moving correctly. The sun was low on the western horizon. Evening coming on. A mile marker sign stood nearby. Mile marker 168. Boise was at mile marker 172. She was almost there. She'd somehow driven the entire route and couldn't remember any of it after mile marker 62. Sarah? Maya's voice in her ear. I'm here, Sarah said. I'm okay. I think I fell asleep at the wheel. Lost time. I'm almost to Boise. I'll call you when I stop. Okay? Okay. Please be careful. I love you. I love you too. Sarah completed the delivery, though she barely remembered doing it. She drove back to Portland the next day. The route completely normal, nothing strange or backward. But she checked her logbook afterward. The entry she'd seen, departed Boise for MI 84 westbound to Portland, was there in her handwriting, dated March 3rd, 2021, the same day, as if she'd somehow driven the route in both directions simultaneously. Sarah still drives trucks. She still runs the Portland-Boise route, but she never drives it on March 3rd. And sometimes, when she passes mile marker 62 in the Columbia River Gorge, she sees another truck stopped on the shoulder, driver's door hanging open. Sometimes she thinks about stopping, checking if the driver needs help, but she never does, because she's afraid of what she'll find. Afraid she'll see herself, sitting in the cab, staring forward with dead eyes, trapped in a loop of backward miles, driving forever toward a destination she'll never reach. Story 3. The Voice in the Load. Dennis Kowalski had spent 22 years hauling everything from furniture to livestock across the American heartland. At 53 years old, he'd seen enough of the country's highways to know that weird things happen out there in the dark. Things that most people never experience, insulated as they were in their suburban homes. But Dennis had rules. He didn't pick up hitchhikers, didn't stop at rest areas after midnight if he could help it, and never, ever open a sealed trailer unless absolutely necessary. On November 19, 2020, Dennis broke that last rule. He'd picked up the load in Memphis, Tennessee, on a cold Thursday afternoon. The manifest said it was furniture, tables, chairs, cabinets, bound for a distribution center in Omaha, Nebraska. The trailer had been sealed at the warehouse, the bolt lock secured, and Dennis had done his inspection, checked his lights, and headed out just before 3 p.m. The route would take him up through Arkansas, across Missouri, and into Iowa, about 18 hours of driving with breaks. The first sign that something was wrong came around 10 p.m., somewhere north of Kansas City. Dennis was cruising along Interstate 29, classic rock playing softly on his radio, when he heard it, a voice. It was faint, muffled, coming from somewhere behind him. At first, he thought it was a radio, some weird interference. But when he turned the radio off, he could still hear it, a voice, speaking words he couldn't quite make out. coming from the trailer. Dennis's first thought was that someone had gotten into the trailer back in Memphis. It happens sometimes. Homeless people looking for a warm place to sleep, or occasionally someone trying to smuggle themselves across state lines. Dennis pulled onto the shoulder and got out, grabbing his flashlight. The November wind cut through his jacket as he walked back to the trailer. He pressed his ear against the cold metal. At first, nothing. Then, faintly, he heard again, a voice, speaking in a steady rhythm, almost like someone reciting something. Dennis rattled the bolt seals. They were intact, unbroken. No one could have gotten in without breaking those seals. He walked around the entire trailer, checking every seam, every rivet. Everything was secure. The voice had stopped. Dennis stood in the cold for a minute longer, then decided he must have imagined it. Road fatigue, maybe. He'd been driving since early morning. He climbed back in the cab and pulled back onto the highway. 20 miles later, the voice came back. This time it was clearer, and Dennis could make out some of the words. It was a man's voice, deep and resonant, and it was speaking in a language Dennis didn't recognize. Not Spanish or French or German. Something older sounding, with harsh consonants and rolling vowels. The voice spoke for about 30 seconds, then stopped abruptly. Dennis felt the hair on his arm stand up. He grabbed his CB radio. This is Nebraska bound on 29 northbound, mile marker 97. Anybody else out here? A voice crackled back immediately. Roger, Nebraska bound. This is Midnight Runner about 5 miles ahead of you. What's your 20? I'm hauling furniture, sealed trailer out of Memphis. You ever hear of cargo making noise? Like voices? There was a pause. Voices? What kind of voices? Like someone talking. But my seals are intact. No one could be in there. Another pause, longer this time. Brother, I've been driving these roads for 30 years. I've heard plenty of strange things. My advice? Don't open that trailer. Whatever you're hearing, it ain't nothing good. You just drive to your destination, drop that trailer, and forget about it. The driver's words should have been reassuring, but they sent a chill down Dennis's spine. Roger that. Thanks, Midnight Runner. Stay safe out there, brother. Dennis drove on. The voice came and went. Sometimes it would be silent for 30 minutes, and Dennis would start to relax. Convince himself it was just the cargo shifting or wind whistling through some gap in the trailer. Then the voice would start again, that strange, harsh language, speaking in steady, rhythmic patterns. Around midnight, Dennis pulled into a truck stop outside of St. Joseph, Missouri. He needed fuel and coffee, and he wanted to check those seals one more time. The truck stop was busy, a dozen trucks scattered around the parking lot, their running lights glowing in the darkness. Dennis fueled up, then parked in the back row and went inside. The coffee was terrible, burning bitter, but it was hot and it was caffeine. He bought a sandwich and an energy drink, then headed back out to his truck. As he approached, he saw someone standing by his trailer. A man in coveralls, older, maybe 60, with gray hair and a weathered face. "Help you?" Dennis asked. The man turned. "This your load?" "Yeah." "Why?" The man walked closer, and Dennis could see his eyes were red-rimmed, like he'd been crying. "You hear it?" "Hear what?" "The voice." The voice in the trailer. Dennis felt his stomach drop. "How do you know about that?" The man shook his head slowly. "Because I hauled that same load. 6 months ago. Same freight company, same Memphis warehouse, same destination. And I heard the voice too." Dennis stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "They keep shipping it. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. But that voice that gets inside your head, it makes you want to open the trailer. You can't open it. You understand me? You cannot open that trailer. What happens if I do?" The man's face went pale. "I opened it. Back in June. I was halfway to Omaha, just like you are now. And I couldn't take it anymore. That voice talking and talking. So I broke the seals and I opened the doors." What was inside? Dennis asked, though part of him didn't want to know. The man's hands were shaking. Nothing. Just furniture. Tables, chairs, cabinets. Just like the manifest said. But the voice didn't stop. It got louder. And I realized the voice wasn't coming from the furniture. It was coming from the empty space between things. The air itself was talking. The man grabbed Dennis's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. I slammed those doors shut, and I drove straight to Omaha, 90 miles an hour. Didn't stop for nothing. I dropped that trailer, and I quit. Haven't driven since. But sometimes, at night, I can still hear it. That voice speaking in my head. Dennis pulled his arm free. You're messing with me. This is some kind of joke. The man laughed, a bitter sound. I wish it was, friend. I truly do. You'll see. Another hour up the road. That voice is going to start saying things you understand. It's going to say your name. It's going to tell you things about yourself. Things no one else knows. And then it's going to ask you to open the trailer. You have to resist. You have to just drive. The man walked away, disappearing between the rows of parked trucks. Dennis stood there for a moment, then climbed back into his cab. His hands were shaking as he started the engine. This was insane. The guy was obviously disturbed, maybe drunk. Dennis pulled back onto the highway, trying to forget the conversation. But he couldn't, because as soon as he was up to speed, the voice started again. And this time it was speaking English. Dennis. The voice said, clear as day, resonating through the cab. Dennis Kowalski, born April 12, 1967, in Cleveland, Ohio. Married to Linda for 18 years. Divorced for 6. 2 children, Michael and Sarah. You miss them. You think about them every day. Dennis felt his blood turn to ice. You're afraid, the voice continued, that you wasted your life. All those years on the road, away from your family. All those moments you missed. Birthday parties, school plays, bedtime stories. You traded them for highway miles and paychecks. Stop, Dennis whispered. The voice didn't stop. You wonder if Michael forgives you. He said he did at your father's funeral, but you saw the distance in his eyes. And Sarah barely speaks to you anymore. Christmas cards, that's all. You're a stranger to your own daughter. Stop, Dennis shouted. The voice paused, and I can show you, if you open the trailer. I can show you what you lost. I can give you one more chance to say the things you never said. Dennis's vision blurred with tears. How could the voice know these things? How could it know about the fight with Michael? The way Sarah had stopped calling? The crushing loneliness of his life? You're not real, Dennis said. You're just cargo shifting, or I'm hallucinating. The voice laughed, a warm, almost paternal sound. Dennis, you know I'm real. You felt me, haven't you? That presence, watching you from the dark spaces of the world. I've been with you for years. All those nights alone in truck stop parking lots. All those empty highways. Did you really think you were alone? Mile after mile, the voice talked. It told Dennis about his childhood, about the bike accident when he was 7, about the girl he'd loved in high school, about his father's disappointment when Dennis dropped out of college. It knew everything, and worse, it understood. The voice was sympathetic, kind even. It spoke like an old friend, like someone who truly cared. And slowly, Dennis felt his resistance crumbling. Around 3 a.m., somewhere in southern Iowa, Dennis pulled onto the shoulder. He sat there with the engine idling, staring at nothing. The voice had been silent for 20 minutes, and in that silence, Dennis could feel it waiting. He got out of the cab. The night was freezing, clouds covering the stars. Dennis walked back to the trailer with his bolt cutters in hand. He stood there in front of the sealed doors, the metal cold under his touch. Don't do this, he told himself. But his hands moved anyway, cutting through the bolt seals. They fell away with metallic clinks. Dennis grabbed the door handles and pulled. The door swung open with a rusty groan. Inside, in the darkness of the trailer, Dennis could see the furniture. Tables, chairs, cabinets, all strapped down and secure. And between them, in the spaces, nothing, just dark air. He stood there, waiting for something to happen. The voice didn't speak. Dennis climbed up into the trailer, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. He walked between the furniture, checking every item. Nothing unusual, just furniture. Plain, ordinary furniture. He laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. He let some crazy old man at a truck stop spook him into hearing things. There was no voice. There never had been. Just stress and fatigue and an overactive imagination. He turned to climb out of the trailer. A hand grabbed his ankle. Dennis screamed and fell, his flashlight skittering away. In its spinning beam, he saw something between the furniture, a figure impossibly thin, with too many joints in its arms and legs. It was the color of shadow, darker than the darkness around it, and where its face should have been was just a mouth, open and full of needle teeth. The mouth moved, and the voice came out, the same voice he'd been hearing, but now it was all around him, inside him. "Thank you, Dennis," the voice said. "I've been wanting to stretch my legs." The thing pulled itself out from between the furniture, its body unfolding in ways that hurt Dennis's eyes to watch. It crawled over him, and Dennis felt its weight, cold and wrong, pressing him down. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The thing's mouth opened wider, impossibly wide, and darkness poured out, flooding Dennis's vision, filling his lungs, drowning him. Dennis woke up 6 hours later, slumped in his cab. The sun was up, bright and cold. His head pounded. He sat up confused. He was parked at the Omaha distribution center. His trailer was gone, already unloaded. A worker knocked on his window. "Hey, buddy, you okay? You've been asleep for 3 hours. We unloaded your trailer." Dennis nodded mutely. He checked his phone. 17 missed calls from his company. He didn't remember driving to Omaha. He didn't remember anything after opening the trailer. He started his truck and drove away, heading back to Memphis for another load. But something was different. Dennis felt lighter, empty, like something had been scooped out of him. He tried to think about his kids, about Michael and Sarah, but he couldn't conjure their faces. He knew he had children. He knew their names, but he couldn't remember what they looked like, couldn't remember the sound of their voices. It was like someone had reached into his memories and pulled out everything that mattered. Dennis drives truck still. He takes any load they give him, any route, any cargo. He doesn't sleep well. He doesn't sleep at all, some nights. And sometimes, when he's on empty highways in the dark hours before dawn, he hears that voice again, coming from inside his own head now, speaking in that harsh, ancient language, speaking with his mouth. He'll catch himself talking, words spilling out that he doesn't understand, and he'll stop, terrified, only to start again minutes later. Dennis knows what happened. Something got out of that trailer, and something else got in. He just can't remember which one is him anymore. Story 4. The Children's Choir. Raymond Torres had been hauling loads across the Southwest for 11 years when he took the job that would change everything. It was August 2018, brutally hot even at night, and Raymond was running a shipment of school supplies from Phoenix to a warehouse in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The route was straightforward. Interstate 40 east through the desert, about 7 hours of driving. Raymond had done it dozens of times. He knew every truck stop, every gas station, every scenic overlook. On the night of August 23rd, Raymond discovered there were parts of that highway he'd never seen before. He left Phoenix at 9 p.m., trying to avoid the worst of the heat. The sun had set, but the pavement still radiated warmth, and the air conditioning in Raymond's cab struggled to keep up. The traffic thinned out quickly once he was past the city, just the occasional car passing in the opposite direction. Raymond had the radio on, scanning between stations as he drove. looking for something other than static and late-night talk shows. Around midnight, somewhere between Holbrook and Gallup, Raymond's engine started making a noise. It was a subtle thing at first, just a faint ticking sound that blended with the normal mechanical rumble. But it grew louder, more insistent. Raymond checked his gauges. Temperature was fine, oil pressure was good, but the sound continued. He decided to pull off at the next exit and check it out. Better to lose 30 minutes now than break down in the middle of nowhere. The exit appeared sooner than he expected. Raymond didn't remember an exit at this mile marker, but there it was, clearly marked. Rest area, food, fuel. He took the exit ramp, which curved away from the interstate and down into darkness. The lights of the highway disappeared quickly behind him, and Raymond found himself on a narrow two-lane road with no streetlights. His headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness, illuminating desert scrub and weathered rock formations. After about 2 miles, Raymond started to wonder if he'd made a mistake. There was no rest area, no sign of any services, just empty desert road. He was about to turn around when his headlights picked out a building ahead. It was a truck stop, old-fashioned looking, with a faded sign that read Desert Rose Travel Plaza. The parking lot had maybe a dozen spots, and a few cars were scattered around, along with one other semi-truck. Raymond pulled in and parked. The engine noise had stopped, but he wanted to check it anyway. He grabbed his flashlight and got out. The night air was still hot, and there was no wind, no sound except the ticking of his engine cooling. Raymond walked around to inspect the engine compartment, but everything looked fine. Whatever had been making that noise seemed to have resolved itself. He decided to go inside and grab a coffee before getting back on the road. The truck stop was one of those old-school places with a diner attached, the kind that used the interstate system before corporate chains took over. The fluorescent lights inside were harsh, casting everything in a flat, colorless glow. A bell jingled as Raymond pushed through the door. The place was nearly empty. An old man sat at the counter, nursing a cup of coffee. A waitress stood behind the counter, middle-aged with bleached blonde hair. She looked up as Raymond entered and gave him a tired smile. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please," Raymond said, taking a seat at the counter, leaving an empty stool between himself and the old man. The waitress poured him a cup from a pot that looked like it had been sitting on the burner for hours. The coffee was black and bitter, but was hot, and Raymond drank it anyway. The old man glanced at him. "Passing through?" "Yeah," Raymond said, "heading to Albuquerque." The old man nodded slowly. "Long drive." "Not too bad. You from around here?" "Used to be," the old man said. "Long time ago, before the interstate changed everything." Raymond was about to ask what he meant when he heard it. Singing. Children's voices, high and clear, singing in harmony. The sound was coming from somewhere in the back of the truck stop, maybe from a radio or a TV, but there was something off about it. The melody was strange, discordant, with intervals that didn't quite fit together. And the words, Raymond couldn't make them out, but they weren't in English. "What's that music?" Raymond asked. The waitress's smile faltered. "What music?" "The singing." "Kid singing." The waitress and the old man exchanged a glance. "You hear it?" the old man asked quietly. "Yeah, of course I hear it. It's right there, coming from the back." Raymond pointed. The singing continued, getting slightly louder. More voices joining in, a whole choir of children singing that weird, wrong melody. The old man stood up, putting some bills on the counter. "You should go," he said to Raymond. "Get back in your truck and get back to the highway. Don't stay here." "What are you talking about?" Raymond asked, confused. "Just go. Trust me." The old man walked out, the bell jingling behind him. Raymond looked at the waitress. What's his problem? The waitress wouldn't meet his eyes. You should listen to him. Sometimes people hear things out here. Desert plays tricks. The singing grew louder still. It was definitely coming from the back, from a doorway marked "Employees Only." Raymond stood up. "Is there a radio back there or something?" "Sir, please," the waitress said, and there was fear in her voice now. "You need to leave. Right now." But Raymond's curiosity was overpowering his common sense. He walked toward the door. The waitress called after him, but he ignored her. He pushed through the door into the back area. It was a storage room, dimly lit, full of boxes and supplies. And standing in the center of the room were children, maybe 20 of them, ranging in age from about 5 to 12. They wore old-fashioned clothes, like something from 100 years ago. Simple dresses and shorts, button-up shirts, and leather shoes. They stood in neat rows, facing Raymond, mouths open, singing. Their eyes were closed, and they swayed slightly as they sang. Raymond stood frozen in the doorway. The children's song washed over him, and now that he was close, he could hear the words. They were singing in English, but the words made no sense, strung together in random order. Sky beneath the walking backward time tomorrow. Yesterday, running, standing, sleeping, waking, empty, full, nothing, everything. The words tumbled over each other, creating a meaningless stream of sound that somehow formed a coherent melody. "Hey," Raymond said weakly. "Hey, kids, what are you doing?" The children didn't respond. They kept singing, eyes closed, swaying. Raymond stepped closer. There was something wrong with their skin. It looked gray in the dim light, with an odd texture like dried leather. And they weren't breathing. Their chests didn't move. The song came from their open mouths, but there was no breath, no rise and fall of lungs. Raymond reached out toward the nearest child, a little girl with pigtails. His hand touched her shoulder, and the singing stopped instantly. All 20 children opened their eyes at once. Their eyes were black, completely black, like holes in their faces. They turned their heads in unison to look at Raymond. Then they smiled, all of them, smiles far too wide, revealing too many teeth. Raymond stumbled backward, terror flooding through him. The children didn't move, but their smiles grew wider and wider until their faces seemed to split in half. Then they started singing again, but this time it was different. This time they were singing Raymond's name over and over in that discordant harmony. Raymond Torres, Raymond Torres, Raymond Torres. He ran. He crashed through the door, through the diner, past the waitress who was standing with her hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face. Raymond burst out into the parking lot and sprinted to his truck. He hauled himself into the cab, slammed the door, and started the engine. The truck roared to life, and Raymond threw into gear, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the wheel. He accelerated out of the parking lot, tires squealing, and onto the dark road. In his mirrors, he could see the truck stop receding behind him, and in the windows, he could see small silhouettes, children standing and watching him go. Raymond drove back to the interstate, pushed his truck as fast as he dared on the narrow road. When he reached the on-ramp, he nearly sobbed with relief. The familiar lights of the interstate, the white lines, the reflective signs, civilization, normalcy, sanity. He merged into traffic and drove east, his heart still hammering. But the singing didn't stop. Raymond could still hear it, faintly, like it was coming from very far away. The children's voices, singing his name, singing those nonsense words. He turned on his radio, cranking the volume, trying to drown it out. But even over the blaring music, he could hear it, a whisper underneath everything. Always there, Raymond completed his delivery to Albuquerque. He didn't tell anyone what happened. Who would believe him? He convinced himself it must have been a hallucination. Heat stroke, maybe, or something in the coffee. Bad food causing fever dreams. But when he took Interstate 40 back toward Phoenix 2 days later, Raymond looked for that exit. He knew approximately where it should be, between Holbrook and Gallup. But there was no exit, no rest area, no Desert Rose Travel Plaza. Just empty desert stretching to the horizon. Raymond kept driving trucks, but he changed his routes. He refused any loads that would take him on Interstate 40. He told Dispatch he had family issues in Albuquerque, that he couldn't go there anymore. They accommodated him, but the singing never completely stopped. Sometimes at night, when Raymond was alone in his cab, he'd hear it, faint but unmistakable. Children's voices, singing in that wrong harmony. 3 months later, Raymond was hauling to Nevada on US 93 when he saw something that made his blood run cold. There, on the shoulder of the highway, was a group of children, 20 of them, standing in a neat line, wearing old-fashioned clothes. They were too far away for Raymond to see their faces clearly, but he could see them watching the traffic pass, just standing there in the middle of nowhere, watching. Raymond kept driving, forcing himself not to look in his mirrors. But he heard it, the singing, suddenly loud, filling his cab. The children's choir, singing his name. Raymond pushed the accelerator to the floor, his truck groaning as it hit 80, then 85 miles per hour. The singing faded slowly, but it didn't disappear completely. It never does. Raymond quit driving 6 months ago. He works at a warehouse now, never traveling more than 10 miles from his house. He sees a therapist who specializes in PTSD. The therapist thinks Raymond had some kind of psychotic break, brought on by stress and isolation. Raymond lets her think that. He takes the medication she prescribes, even though it doesn't help, because nothing helps. Nothing stops the singing. Last week, Raymond's daughter brought his granddaughter to visit. Emily, 5 years old, sweet and talkative. They were playing in Raymond's backyard when Emily suddenly stopped and cocked her head, listening. "Grandpa," she said, "do you hear the music?" Raymond felt his heart stop. "What music, honey?" The kid's singing. They're singing a funny song. Emily hummed a few bars, and Raymond recognized it instantly. That discordant, wrong melody. "They're in the trees, Grandpa. Do you see them? They want me to come play with them. They know my name." Raymond grabbed Emily and ran inside, calling for his daughter. They left within minutes. His daughter angry and confused by Raymond's panic. She hasn't brought Emily back since. Raymond knows what's happening. The children's choir is growing. They're looking for new voices, and they know where he lives. Some nights, Raymond stands at his bedroom window and looks out at the tree line bordering his property, and sometimes he sees them, small silhouettes standing among the trees, swaying slightly, their mouths open in silent song, waiting, always waiting, and singing his name in the darkness. Story 5. The Weighing Station. Jack Morrison had been hauling freight for Midwest Express for 16 years, and in all that time, he'd never missed a weigh station. It wasn't just about following regulations, though Jack was meticulous about that. It was about respect for the system, for the rules that kept commerce flowing and highways safe. So when Jack approached the weigh station on Interstate 70 outside of Russell, Kansas, on the night of February 11, 2022, he pulled in like he always did. He had no way of knowing that this particular weigh station had been officially closed for 3 years. The night was clear and bitterly cold, temperature hovering around 15 degrees. Jack was hauling machine parts from Denver to St. Louis, a straightforward run across the Great Plains. He'd been driving since noon, and it was now approaching 11 p.m. The highway was nearly empty, just the occasional car passing every few minutes. Kansas stretched flat and dark in all directions, broken only by distant farmhouse lights. The weigh station sign appeared in Jack's headlights. All trucks must enter. The lights were on in the station building, and Jack could see the scale lights illuminated. He put on his turn signal and took the exit ramp, pulling onto the scale as the overhead sign instructed. The truck's weight registered on the digital display, 78,440 pounds, well under his limit. Jack waited for the green light that would allow him to proceed. Instead, a red light came on and a speaker crackled to life. "Driver, Please proceed to the inspection bay on your right and shut down your engine. Jack sighed. Random inspections were annoying, but part of the job. He pulled forward into the covered inspection bay and shut down his truck. The sudden silence was profound after hours of engine noise. Jack grabbed his paperwork and climbed down from the cab. The inspection bay was well lit, with doors at the far end that presumably led into the main building. Something felt off, though he couldn't immediately identify what. The vending machine offered brands he didn't recognize, sodas with names like Refresh and Quench, candy bars labeled simply chocolate and peanut. The posters on the walls were wrong too. They showed safety regulations, but the text was slightly blurred, as if photocopied too many times. And there were no dates on anything, no calendar, no clock on the wall. Your logbook has discrepancies, Inspector Davis said. Jack turned back to the window. What kind of discrepancies? Your hours don't add up correctly. According to this, you've been driving for 23 hours straight. That's not possible, Jack said. I took my 10-hour break last night in Denver. Left the hotel at noon today. That's in my book. Davis tapped the logbook. Not according to this. This shows continuous driving since yesterday at noon. Jack felt a flicker of irritation. Let me see. Davis passed the logbook back. Jack opened it and felt his stomach drop. The entries were in his handwriting, but they weren't what he'd written. The log showed him leaving Denver yesterday, not today, and driving continuously for the past 23 hours with no breaks. This is wrong, Jack said. I didn't write this. This isn't what I logged. Are you saying this isn't your logbook? Davis asked. It's my logbook, but these entries are wrong. They've been changed somehow. Davis's colorless eyes fixed on Jack. Logbooks don't change themselves, driver. Falsifying a logbook is a federal offense. I'm going to need to conduct a full inspection of your vehicle and cargo. Fine, Jack said. Inspect whatever you want. But I'm telling you, I didn't write these entries. Davis stood up. Follow me. He came through a door at the side of the counter, and Jack noticed something strange. Inspector Davis didn't walk normally. His movements were stiff, mechanical, like a person who had to think about each step. They went back out to the inspection bay, the cold hitting them like a wall. Davis walked around Jack's truck, making notes on a clipboard. He checked the tires, the lights, the securement of the cargo. Everything was in order. Jack stood watching, his hands in his pockets, wondering what the hell was going on. I need to inspect the interior of your cab, Davis said. Sure, Jack said, though a part of him wanted to refuse. There was something deeply wrong about this whole situation, something he couldn't articulate. Davis climbed up into the truck, and Jack followed. Davis went through the cab methodically, checking the glove box, looking under the seats, examining the sleeper berth. He found nothing because there was nothing to find. Jack kept his truck clean and didn't carry anything illegal. Then Davis opened Jack's cooler. Inside were Jack's lunch, a sandwich he'd made that morning, a cup of apples, and some bottles of water. Davis pulled out the sandwich and unwrapped it. What's this? Davis asked. It's a sandwich, turkey and cheese. Davis stared at it, then at Jack. Where did you get this? I made it this morning at my hotel. That's impossible. What are you talking about? Jack asked. Davis held up the sandwich. This sandwich is rotting. It's been sitting for days. Jack looked. Davis was right. The bread was moldy, the turkey gray and desiccated. But that was impossible. Jack had made that sandwich 8 hours ago. He bought the ingredients yesterday at a grocery store in Denver. Everything fresh. I don't understand, Jack said. That was fresh this morning. Davis dropped the sandwich back in the cooler. Driver, how long have you been at this way station? I don't know, 20 minutes. Davis shook his head. Check your phone. Jack pulled out his phone. The screen showed the time, 2:47 a.m. That couldn't be right. Jack had pulled in at 11 p.m. "My phone's wrong," Jack said. "Check again." Jack looked at the date. February 14th. "This is wrong," Jack said, his voice rising. "It's February 11th. It's February 11th. Davis climbed down from the truck. "Come with me." They went back inside the way station. Davis led Jack to a different room, this one filled with filing cabinets. Davis opened one and pulled out a folder. He spread papers on a desk. They were way station records, and Jack's name was on them, but the dates were wrong. The papers showed Jack had been through this way station dozens of times, every few days for the past 3 years. The same truck, the same cargo, the same route, over and over. "I've never been to this way station before," Jack said. "I don't even remember seeing it on this route." "You come through every 4 days," Davis said. "Like clockwork. You pull in, you get flagged for inspection, you wait, and then you leave. And then 4 days later, you come back and we do it all over again." "That's insane. That's not happening." Davis pointed to one of the papers. February 7th. "You were here." Before that, February 3rd. Before that, January 30th. On and on, going back 3 years. Jack's mind reeled. "Why don't I remember?" "Because you never leave," Davis said. "None of them do." "What?" Davis gestured around them. "This way station. You can check in, but you can't check out. The road you came in on? If you go back and try to leave, you'll just end up back here. The interstate doesn't connect anymore. It's been closed for 3 years. Fell into a sinkhole. Took half the highway with it. This whole section was condemned and fenced off. But the way station kept running. It always keeps running." Jack backed away. "You're crazy. This is crazy." He turned and ran. Out of the room, through the waiting area, out into the inspection bay. His truck sat where he'd left it. Jack climbed in and started the engine, his hands shaking. He put in gear and drove out of the bay, onto the exit ramp that led back to the interstate. The road curved, and Jack followed it. But instead of merging onto Interstate 70, the road curved back around. Jack found himself approaching the way station again. The sign read, "All trucks must enter." "No," Jack said. He drove past the entrance, continuing on what should have been the interstate. But the road just curved again, looping back, like a figure eight with the way station at its center. Jack tried 3 more times, pushing his truck faster, trying to find an exit, a turnoff, anything. But there was nothing, just a loop of road and the way station at its heart. Finally, Jack pulled back into the inspection bay and shut off his engine. He sat in the dark cab, tears running down his face. Inspector Davis appeared at his window, tapping on the glass. Jack rolled it down. "You understand now," Davis said. It wasn't a question. "How long have you been here?" Jack asked. "I don't know. 23 a.m. But outside it was still night, still cold, still the same way station." Jack got out and went inside. Inspector Davis sat behind his window, as if he'd never moved. "Your logbook has discrepancies," Davis said in that same flat voice. "We've done this already," Jack said. "I know. We'll do it again. And again. That's how it works here. Time passes, but nothing changes." Jack did the inspection routine with Davis again. It was identical to before, down to the specific words used. When it was done, Jack got back in his truck and drove the loop. He counted. It took exactly 4 minutes to complete. 4 minutes of driving before he was back at the way station. He tried again. Another 4 minutes. Again. He lost count of how many loops he drove. Sometimes Jack would see other trucks at the way station. They'd be on the scale or in the inspection bays. But if Jack tried to approach them, tried to talk to the drivers, they wouldn't acknowledge him. They'd look right through him, as if he wasn't there. Jack realized that each driver was probably in their own loop, their own isolated bubble of repeated time, alone together. Jack doesn't know how long he's been at the way station now. His phone says months have passed, but it's always the same night. He's tried everything to escape. He's tried ramming his truck through the darkness beyond the road. He tried setting fire to the way station, but the building wouldn't burn. He tried refusing to cooperate with inspections, but then time would just reset and he'd be back at the beginning, pulling onto the scale. Sometimes Jack parks his truck and just sits in the cab, staring at nothing. He thinks about his wife, his 2 sons, his house in Missouri. Do they remember him? Did he just disappear from their lives? Or in the outside world, is he still driving, still making his deliveries, unaware that some part of him is trapped here in this endless loop? Inspector Davis once told Jack that occasionally, a driver does escape. The loop releases them, for reasons no one understands. They drive away and never come back. Jack doesn't know if he believes that. It might just be a lie Davis tells to keep the drivers from going completely insane. A small bit of hope to cling to, but Jack keeps trying. Every cycle, he looks for something different, some detail that's changed, some flaw in the loop he can exploit. He's memorized every word of Davis's speech, every paper in the filing cabinets, every crack in the pavement. He's become an expert in the geography of his prison, and he waits, because maybe Davis is telling the truth. Maybe one day, Jack will drive that 4-minute loop, and instead of returning to Way Station, he'll find himself back on Interstate 70, heading east toward St. Louis. Maybe he'll deliver his load of machine parts 3 years late and go home to his family. Or maybe he'll drive that loop forever, one of dozens of ghost drivers circling a closed way station on an abandoned highway, trapped in a bubble of frozen time. Jack doesn't know, but he keeps driving because it's all he knows how to do, and because stopping, accepting his fate, feels like a kind of death. So Jack pulls onto the scale, gets the red light, pulls into the inspection bay. Inspector Davis checks his logbook, finds discrepancies. They do the inspection. Jack tries to leave. The road loops back. Again, forever. Story 6. The Empty Load. Teresa Valdez had been driving for West Coast Logistics for 8 years when she got the call for a special delivery. It was May 17th, 2019, and Teresa was at home in Bakersfield, California, enjoying a rare day off when her dispatcher phoned. Teresa, I know it's your weekend, but I've got an urgent run. Premium pay, double rate. You interested? Teresa almost said no. She was tired, and she promised her girlfriend they'd spend the weekend together. But double rate was hard to turn down. What's the cargo? She asked. That's the thing, the dispatcher said. There is no cargo. It's an empty trailer. But the client wants it moved from Sacramento to Las Vegas, and they want it done overnight. They're willing to pay premium for discretion and speed. Why would someone pay premium to move an empty trailer? Teresa asked. Above my pay grade, the dispatcher said. You want it or not? Teresa thought about the money. Yeah, send me the details. 2 hours later, Teresa was pulling out of the West Coast Logistics yard in Sacramento with an empty 53-foot drive van trailer. The paperwork was minimal. No bill of lading since there was no cargo, just a delivery address in Las Vegas, and instructions to call a number when she arrived. Teresa hooked up her trailer, did her inspection, and hit the road. It was 6 p.m., and the sun was beginning to set over the California hills. The route was simple. Interstate 80 east to Reno, then US 95 south to Las Vegas. About 8 hours of driving. Teresa settled in, her mind wandering as the highway miles rolled past. The trailer pulled light and easy behind her, and with no cargo to worry about, this was probably the easiest money she'd make all year. Still, something nagged at her. Why pay premium rates for an empty trailer? What could possibly be urgent about it? Around 9 p.m., somewhere between Reno and Tonopah, Teresa started to notice a sound. It was coming from the trailer, a subtle thumping, like something shifting around in the empty space. Teresa frowned. There shouldn't be anything in there to shift. She'd done the inspection herself. The trailer had been completely empty. She listened more carefully. The sound came at irregular intervals. Thump, thump, pause, thump, like footsteps. Teresa pulled over at the next turnout and grabbed her flashlight. The Nevada desert was dark and cold after the heat of the day. She walked back to the trailer and tried the doors. They were locked, sealed with the company's standard boat seal. Intact, unbroken. Teresa pressed her ear against the trailer's metal wall. Silence. She waited. Nothing. She was about to go back to her cab when she heard again a thump from inside, loud and distinct, like someone had kicked the wall. "Hello?" Teresa called out. No answer. Just silence. Teresa rattled the doors, but they were secure. The seal was intact. No one could be inside, unless they had been locked in before the trailer left Sacramento. But that was impossible. Teresa had checked it herself. She took out her phone and called the dispatcher number. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey, this is Teresa. I'm on the Vegas run with the empty trailer. I'm hearing noises from inside. Can you confirm this thing was empty when it left the yard? Call me back." Teresa got back in her cab and continued driving, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The thumping continued, sporadic but persistent. Sometimes it sounded like footsteps pacing the length of the trailer. Sometimes like fists pounding on the walls. Once, Teresa could have sworn she heard a voice. Muffled, impossible to make out words, but definitely a human voice. She tried the dispatcher again. Still voicemail. She tried calling the number from the delivery instructions. It rang and rang with no answer. Teresa's unease grew. She thought about stopping at the next town, calling the police, having them open the trailer. But what if she was wrong? What if it was just cargo shifting, some boxes or equipment they'd forgotten to log? She looked like an idiot, and she'd probably lose the double rate pay. Mile marker 88, US 95 South. Middle of the Nevada desert. Teresa saw lights ahead. A gas station, one of those lonely outposts that served the sparse traffic along this route. She pulled in, parked away from the pumps, and shut down her engine. She sat in the dark cab, listening. The thumping had stopped. Complete silence from the trailer. Teresa grabbed her keys and flashlight and walked around to the back of the trailer. She stared at the bolt seal. Company policy was clear. Never break a seal without authorization. But the noises, the voice, what if someone really was locked in there? What if they were suffocating, dying while she drove? Teresa made a decision. She pulled her bolt cutters from the side compartment and cut the seal. It fell away with a metallic snap. Teresa's heart hammered as she grabbed the door handles and pulled. The doors swung open. Teresa shined her flashlight inside. The trailer was empty. Completely, utterly empty. The metal walls reflected her flashlight beam, showing nothing but vacant space. No cargo, no person, no explanation for the sounds she'd been hearing. Teresa stepped up into the trailer, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. She walked the length of it, checking every corner, every rivet. Nothing, just empty space. Teresa climbed down, feeling foolish and relieved at the same time. It must have been road vibrations, acoustic tricks, her imagination. She'd broken a seal for no reason, and she'd have to explain that when she delivered. She swung the doors closed and secured them with a spare seal from her emergency kit. She made a note of the seal number for her paperwork. Then she got back in her cab and continued south. But 5 miles down the road, the sound started again. This time they were louder. Not thumping now, but scraping. Long, drawn-out scrapes against the metal walls, like fingernails dragging across a chalkboard. The sound set Teresa's teeth on edge. She just checked the trailer. She knew it was empty. So what was making that sound? Teresa grabbed her CB radio. This is westbound on 95 South, mile marker 83. Anybody out there? Static crackled. Is there anybody on 95? I need someone to verify I'm not crazy. A voice answered, rough and male. This is Nevada Holler northbound. Just passed you about 2 minutes ago. What's your problem? The trailer I'm pulling. It's making sounds, like someone's inside. A pause. Sealed trailer? Yeah, but I checked it. Just checked it. It's empty. Another pause, longer. Listen, friend. I've been running these Nevada routes for 20 years. Sometimes the desert plays tricks. Heat mirages, weird sounds bouncing off the mountains. You're probably hearing echoes from your own engine. I know engine sounds, Teresa said. This is different. Look, you got another hour to Vegas. You want my advice? Turn up your radio, focus on the road, and get that trailer delivered. Whatever you think you're hearing, it ain't worth worrying about. The radio went silent. Teresa sat there, the scraping sound continuing from the trailer. She turned on her radio, cranked the volume, and drove. For the next 40 miles, Teresa tried to ignore the sounds. She sang along to songs, made lists in her head, recited phone numbers of people she knew, anything to distract from the noise coming from behind her. But it kept changing. The scraping became pounding. The pounding became rhythmic, like drumming. The drumming became that voice again, louder now, speaking words Teresa almost recognized but couldn't quite make out. Then, around midnight, the voice became clear. Teresa, it said. Teresa's hands clenched on the wheel. The voice was coming from her CB radio now, not from the trailer. Teresa Valdez, driver 4482, born in Fresno, California, 8 years with West Coast Logistics. You shouldn't have opened the door. Who is this? Teresa demanded, grabbing the microphone. How do you know my name? You let me out, the voice said. Just a crack. Just enough. I've been in that trailer for 7 weeks. 7 different drivers before you, and none of them opened the door. But you did. Thank you, Teresa. There's nothing in that trailer, Teresa said. I checked. I'm not in the trailer anymore, the voice said, and Teresa felt ice water pour down her spine. I'm in the cab with you. Teresa spun around, looking at the empty sleeper berth behind her. Nothing. She grabbed her flashlight and shined it around the cab. Empty. She was alone. You're not here, she said. The voice laughed, coming from all around her now. Not just the radio. Look closer. Teresa shined her light on the passenger seat. There was a shadow there, not cast by anything, just a shadow darker than the darkness around it, pooling on the seat like liquid. As Teresa watched, the shadow moved. It stood up impossibly, defying physics, a three-dimensional darkness forming into a roughly human shape. Teresa screamed. She jerked the wheel, and her truck veered across the empty highway. She corrected, her heart slamming. The shadow figure stood on the passenger seat, featureless, a void in the shape of a person. What are you? Teresa gasped. Something old. The voice said, something that was locked away. Your company. They know about me. This is what they do. They seal me in a trailer and pay drivers premium rates to haul me across the country. Keep me moving, keep me contained. It usually works, but you open the door. Get out, Teresa said. Get out of my truck. I can't. Not until we reach our destination. That's the nature of the contract. The trailer must be delivered. But now that I'm out of the box, I'm free to roam. And I'm hungry, Teresa. 7 weeks is a long time to go without feeding. The shadow moved closer. Teresa could feel coldness radiating from it, like a winter wind in the desert night. Teresa did the only thing she could think of. She accelerated, pushing her truck to 80, then 90 miles per hour. Speed wouldn't help, but she had to do something. The shadow didn't care about speed. It reached out with appendages that might have been arms, and Teresa felt the touch. It was like ice, like electricity, like every bad feeling she'd ever had concentrated into a single sensation. Her muscles locked up, and she couldn't move. The truck veered off the road, crashed through a guardrail, and rolled. Teresa felt the impact, felt the world spinning, felt metal crumpling and glass shattering. Then darkness. When Teresa woke, dawn was breaking over the Nevada desert. She was lying on sand, 50 feet from her destroyed truck. The trailer had separated and was lying on its side. Emergency vehicles were everywhere. Police, ambulance, fire trucks. A paramedic was leaning over her. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Don't try to move." "The shadow," Teresa said, "in my truck. There was something in my truck." Story 7. The Phantom Dispatcher. Richard Alvarez had been an independent owner-operator for 12 years, running his own truck and taking contracts through a load board app on his phone. He didn't work for any specific company, which gave him freedom, but also meant he was always hustling for the next job. On July 8, 2021, Richard was deadheading from Seattle back to his home base in Phoenix with an empty trailer when he got a notification from the load board. A new job had been posted, Seattle to Phoenix, leaving immediately premium pay. Richard smiled. Perfect timing. He pulled over at the next truck stop and opened the app to accept the load. The job details were straightforward. Pickup at a warehouse in the Georgetown neighborhood of Seattle, delivered to a distribution center in Phoenix. The cargo was listed as mixed household goods. The pay was excellent, nearly double what Richard would normally get for that route. There was a phone number for the dispatcher. Richard called it. "Logistics," a woman's voice answered, efficient and businesslike. "This is Richard Alvarez, driver 8877. I'm calling about the Seattle-Phoenix load." "Yes, Mr. Alvarez. We've been waiting for your call. The cargo is ready. You can pick up immediately at the Georgetown warehouse." "I'll be there in 40 minutes, Richard said. "Very good. Please call this number when you're 10 minutes out, and we'll have the warehouse staff ready to load you." Richard drove to the address, a large industrial building in Georgetown near the Duwamish River. He called the dispatcher number when he was close. "I'm 10 minutes out," he said. "Excellent. They're expecting you. Bay 7. Richard pulled into the warehouse complex. It was late evening, around 9 p.m., and most of the buildings looked closed. But Bay 7 had its lights on and the door open. A forklift operator waved Richard in. The loading took less than 30 minutes. Pallets of boxes, all wrapped in opaque plastic, went into Richard's trailer. The warehouse staff worked efficiently and in silence. When they were done, they sealed the trailer with bolt locks and handed Richard his paperwork. Richard signed, checked his lights and connections, and pulled out. The whole process had been unusually smooth. Richard felt good as he merged onto Interstate 5, heading south. This was going to be an easy run. Around midnight, somewhere in Oregon near Eugene, Richard's phone rang. The dispatcher's number. "Hello," Richard answered. "Mr. Alvarez, this is dispatch. I need you to take a detour. There's been an accident on I-5 near Grants Pass. All commercial traffic is being diverted to Highway 97. "Okay, where do I make the turn?" "Take exit 188 to Highway 58, then connect to 97 South. I'll send the route to your GPS." Richard checked his GPS. A new route appeared, highlighting the detour. It added about 2 hours to his drive, but if the interstate was blocked, he had no choice. Richard took the exit and found himself on a smaller two-lane highway heading east through the Cascade Mountains. The road was dark and winding, with thick forest pressing close on both sides. Richard didn't see any other traffic, which was odd. If there was a major accident causing diversions, there should be other trucks on this detour route. An hour into the detour, Richard's phone rang again. The dispatcher. Mr. Alvarez, there's been another development. I need you to make a stop. A stop? Where? There's a warehouse on your route. I'm sending the coordinates. You need to pick up additional cargo. That wasn't part of the original contract, Richard said. I understand, and you'll be compensated. An additional $1,000 for the stop. It will only take 30 minutes. Richard thought about it. An extra $1,000 for 30 minutes was hard to refuse. Okay, send me the location. The coordinates came through to his GPS. Richard followed them, turning onto progressively smaller roads until he was on what was basically a gravel track through a forest. His truck bounced and swayed, branches scraping the trailer. Richard began to have serious doubts. This didn't feel right. Then his headlights picked out a building ahead. It was old, built of cinder blocks with a corrugated metal roof. There were no windows, just a large rolling door on one side. The building was dark, no lights anywhere. Richard stopped his truck and sat there, engine idling. This looked abandoned. Why would we be picking up cargo here? His phone rang. Mr. Alvarez, are you at the location? The dispatcher asked. Yeah, I'm here, but this place looks abandoned. Are you sure this is right? Quite sure. Please back up to the loading dock. They'll bring the cargo out. I don't see anyone here, Richard said. They're inside. Please proceed. Richard hesitated, then put his truck in reverse. He backed up to the building's rolling door. He set the air brake and climbed down. The forest was silent around him. No sounds of birds or insects, no wind. Just silence and the ticking of his engine cooling. Richard walked to the rolling door and tried to lift it. It rattled up, revealing darkness inside. Richard shined his flashlight into the building. It was empty, completely empty. Concrete floor, bare walls, nothing else. No cargo, no people, no equipment. Richard's skin prickled. Hello, he called. His voice echoed in the empty space. No answer. Richard pulled out his phone and called the dispatcher number. It rang 3 times, then a voice answered. The dispatcher, but her voice was different now, distorted, like it was being played through a bad speaker. Where's the cargo? Richard asked. It's already loaded, the dispatcher said. Check your trailer. That's impossible. I've been standing right here. Check your trailer, Mr. Alvarez. The call disconnected. Richard walked back to his truck, his heart beating fast. He climbed up and looked through the small window that let him see into the trailer. In the dim light from his running lights, Richard could see the cargo he'd loaded in Seattle, the pallets of wrapped boxes, and standing between them, dark shapes, human shapes, 3 of them, perfectly still. Richard's breath caught. Those shapes hadn't been there before. He was sure of it. He'd watched the loading in Seattle, and it had been just the pallets. Richard grabbed his bolt cutters and jumped down. He cut the seal and threw open the trailer doors. His flashlight swept the interior. The pallets were there, but the shapes he'd seen were gone. Just empty space between the cargo. This isn't real, Richard muttered. This isn't real. He slammed the doors shut and got back in his cab. He was leaving, right now, forgetting the detour and the stop and the extra money. Richard threw his truck into gear and accelerated away from the abandoned building, back onto gravel road. His hand shook on the wheel. His phone rang. He ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, Richard grabbed and answered. What do you want? He shouted. Mr. Alvarez, you can't leave, the dispatcher said, her voice calm and steady. You have cargo to deliver. There are things in my trailer. I saw them. Yes, your cargo. You agreed to transport them. I agreed to haul household goods, not whatever those things are. Read your contract, Mr. Alvarez. Section 7, Paragraph 3. Cargo contents may include materials of sensitive nature. Driver agrees not to inspect, photograph, or disclose information about cargo contents. Richard's mind raced. He didn't remember seeing that in the contract, but he'd signed digitally on the app, probably without reading the fine print. "Who are you?" Richard asked. "I'm your dispatcher. I'm here to guide you to your destination." "Where am I really going? This isn't Phoenix, is it?" "Complete your route, Mr. Alvarez. Follow the GPS. Everything will be explained when you arrive." Richard looked at his GPS. The route now showed him continuing east, deeper into mountains, to a destination that had no name, just coordinates. The estimated arrival time was 4:17 a.m. Richard thought about refusing, about calling the police, but something stopped him, a feeling in his gut, a certainty that calling the authorities would be a very bad idea. Whatever he'd gotten involved in, it was beyond the normal world of trucking regulations and contracts. Richard drove. The road became increasingly primitive, barely more than a dirt track in places. His truck bounced over ruts and rocks. The forest around him grew denser, the trees massive and ancient. Richard had the distinct feeling that he was traveling somewhere that wasn't quite on normal maps, somewhere between the official places of the world. His phone GPS showed his blue dot moving, but the map around was blank, just gray space with no details. At 4:17 a.m. exactly, Richard's headlights picked out a gate ahead. It was massive, maybe 20 feet tall, built of dark metal with strange symbols welded into its surface. As Richard approached, the gate swung open silently. Beyond it, Richard could see buildings, low, windowless structures arranged in a compound. There were lights, and Richard could see figures moving around. Human-shaped, but something about the way they moved was wrong. Too fluid, too quick. Richard's phone rang one last time. "Drive to the unloading bay." The dispatcher said, "Your delivery is complete. You'll be paid in full." "What is this place?" Richard asked. "A necessary place. A place where certain things are kept away from the world. You've helped transport some of those things. We're grateful for your service." "And I can leave after this?" "Yes, but you won't remember the route. You'll remember taking I-5 straight to Phoenix. You'll remember a normal, uneventful drive. This conversation, this place, the detour, it will all fade from your memory like a dream." Richard unloaded at the compound. The figures came and removed the cargo with inhuman efficiency. Richard saw the things he glimpsed in his trailer, shadow beings tall and thin, that seemed to shift in and out of visibility. He saw other things too, things in cages on wheel platforms, things that writhed and made sounds that hurt to hear. Richard kept his eyes down, followed instructions, and didn't ask questions. When the trailer was empty, one of the figures, wearing a human-like face that didn't quite move right, handed Richard a tablet. "Sign here." Richard signed. Money appeared in his account instantly, more than had been promised. "Double, triple, for your discretion," the figure said. "Now leave. Follow the GPS home." Richard drove out through the gate. It closed behind him with a solid clang. The GPS showed a route back to a normal highway. Richard followed it, and after about 30 minutes, he found himself on Interstate 84, heading into Idaho. Morning sun was rising. Traffic around him was normal. Cars, trucks, everything ordinary. Richard pulled over at a rest area and checked his phone. His load board app showed a completed delivery from Seattle to Phoenix. His GPS history showed he'd driven I-5 to I-84 to I-15 to Phoenix, a normal route. He had no record of the detour, the dirt roads, the compound. It was like it had never happened. But Richard's trailer still smelled of something strange, something organic and wrong. And when Richard closed his eyes, he could still see those shadow figures, and he could hear the dispatcher's voice. A necessary place, a place where certain things are kept. Richard drove home to Phoenix. He took a week off, telling himself he needed rest. But the dream started. Every night, Richard dreamed of driving through dark forest to that gate, that compound. He dreamed of unloading cargo that writhed and screamed. And in his dreams, the dispatcher's voice was always there, guiding him, thanking him for his service. Richard tried to find the compound again. He drove into the Cascade Mountains, following half-remembered routes. But he could never find it. The roads didn't exist, according to his maps. The place was gone or hidden or had never been there at all. 3 months later, Richard got another notification on his load board. Same type of job, Seattle to Phoenix, premium pay. Richard stared at it for a long time. His finger hovered over the accept button. He thought about refusing, about deleting the app, about quitting trucking altogether. But the money was good, and something in him, some deep, dark part that he didn't like to acknowledge, wanted to see that place again. Wanted to know what else was kept there, what other things moved through the hidden spaces of the world. Richard accepted the load. He picked up at the same Georgetown warehouse. He drove south, and when his phone rang at midnight with instructions for a detour, Richard took it without question, because he understood now. There were places between places, routes that existed outside normal geography, and there were drivers chosen to service those routes, to transport things that couldn't be allowed into the regular world. Richard was one of those drivers now, and some part of him, the part that had always felt like trucking was more than just a job, that the road was a kind of calling, was almost grateful for it. The phantom dispatcher guides him still, calling with instructions, sent him to places that don't appear on any map. Richard hauls things that shouldn't exist to destinations that can't be found. He makes good money, and when he's back in the normal world, driving normal loads on normal routes, he sometimes sees other trucks and wonders if their drivers know the truth too, if they've also been called to service the hidden roads. Richard doesn't know, and he's learned not to ask. Some things are better left as questions. Some roads are better traveled without understanding where they truly lead. Story 8. The Gravel Road Transmission. Tom Bradley had been hauling logs in the Pacific Northwest for 19 years, working for timber companies in Oregon and Washington. It was hard, dangerous work, navigating narrow mountain roads with oversized loads, dealing with weather that ranged from torrential rain to snow and ice. But Tom loved it. He loved the mountains, the massive trees, the solitude of driving routes where he might not see another vehicle for hours. On October 31st, 2020, Tom took a load from a logging site near Mount Hood and discovered that some roads shouldn't be traveled, no matter how experienced the driver. The job seemed routine. Tom was picking up a load of Douglas fir logs from a harvest site on the mountain's eastern slope, delivering them to a mill in Portland. He'd done similar runs dozens of times. The logging foreman gave Tom directions to the site. Take Forest Service Road 48 to Road 4890. Follow that to an unmarked gravel road, about 8 miles up. The site would be clearly visible, marked with company signs and equipment. Tom loaded up around 2 p.m. The afternoon was gray and cold, with low clouds obscuring the mountain's peak. October in the Cascades meant unpredictable weather, and Tom checked his weather app before leaving. The forecast called for rain later, but nothing severe. Tom strapped down his load of massive logs, each one weighing thousands of pounds, and headed out. The first part of the drive was normal. Paved Forest Service roads, well-maintained, marked with mileposts and signs. The turnoff to the gravel road came up at mile marker 23. Tom took it, shifting down his gears for climb. The gravel road was narrow and steep, winding up through thick forest. Tom's truck groaned with the load, but this was normal for logging work. What wasn't normal was how quickly the road deteriorated. Within a mile, the gravel turned to dirt, rutted and muddy. Tom's truck bounced and swayed, and he had to focus intently to keep the massive load stable. After about 30 minutes, Tom realized something was wrong. He should have reached the logging site by now. The foreman had said 8 miles, and Tom's odometer showed he'd driven nearly 12. But there was no site, no equipment, no signs. Just a narrow dirt road, winding up through increasingly dense forest. The trees here were enormous, old-growth timber that should have been protected from logging. Tom felt a prickle of unease. He tried his phone. No signal, which wasn't surprising this far into the mountains. Tom looked for a place to turn around, but the road was too narrow, and with his load of logs, he'd need at least 100 feet of space to safely maneuver. He decided to keep going, figuring the road must widen eventually or connect back to a main route. But after another 20 minutes, the road became even worse. Deep ruts, exposed rocks, sections washed out by rain. Tom was starting to seriously worry about getting stuck. That's when his CB radio crackled to life. "Help! Anyone, please!" The voice was faint, broken up by static, but it was definitely human. Male, young, frightened. Tom grabbed his microphone. "This is Logger Tom on a Forest Service road near Mount Hood. I'm reading you faint. What's your location?" Static hissed for a moment, then, "Trapped, road, can't get out, been driving for days, please days?" That didn't make sense. "What road are you on?" Tom asked. "Give me a landmark, something I can use to find you." "The gravel road, the one that doesn't end. I can't get out." The transmission dissolved into static. Tom tried calling back several times, but there was no response. Tom felt cold sweat on his back, despite the truck's heater running. He looked ahead. The road continued into darkness under the canopy of massive trees. Tom made a decision. He was turning around, even if it meant backing up for half a mile to find a wide spot. Tom stopped his truck and put it in reverse. The backup alarm beeped as he began carefully backing down the narrow road, watching his mirrors intently. He'd backed up maybe 50 yards when the CB crackled again. "Don't turn around." This voice was different, older, gravelly, authoritative. "If you turn around on this road, you'll never get off it. Only way out is forward." "Who is this?" Tom demanded. "A driver who learned the hard way. This is a gravel road. Friend, it doesn't follow normal rules. You're on it now, and the only way off is to reach the end." "What are you talking about? It's just a logging road." "Is it? Look at your odometer. How far have you driven?" Tom looked. The trip odometer showed 31 miles since he'd turned onto the gravel road. But that was impossible. Tom had been driving for maybe an hour, at speeds of 10 to 15 miles per hour on the rough road. He should have covered 8, maybe 10 miles at most, not 31. "That's not right," Tom said. "My odometer's broken." "No, it's not. Distance works different here. Time, too. You've been on this road longer than you think. Check your clock." Tom looked at his dashboard clock. It showed 6:47 p.m., but that was impossible. He'd started up the gravel road around 2:30. Even with slow driving, it shouldn't be past 4 p.m. Tom grabbed his phone. No signal, but the phone's clock showed 6:47 p.m. Over 4 hours had passed in what felt like one. "What is this?" Tom asked into the CB. "A loop," the gravelly voice answered. "A road that turns back on itself in ways that don't make sense. You're not in normal space anymore, friend. You're between some of these old Forest Service roads. They go strange. Something about the geometry of the land, or maybe just bad luck. But once you're on them, the only way off is to find the exit." "Where's the exit?" Tom asked. "Don't know. It's different for everyone. Some find it after a few hours. Some drive for days. Some never find it." Tom's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The voice I heard earlier, the young guy saying he'd been driving for days, probably true. There are others on this road. You might see them, or you might not. Time and space are flexible here. Tom put his truck in drive and continued forward. What choice did he have? He couldn't turn around if it would trap him further. The road climbed higher, the trees growing even larger and older. Some of them had to be centuries old, massive pillars disappearing into the fog above. Around 8 p.m., Tom saw headlights ahead. Another vehicle, stopped in the middle of the road. As Tom approached, he could see it was a pickup truck, old and battered. Tom stopped his rig and got out, grabbing his flashlight. He approached the pickup cautiously. "Hello? Anyone here?" The pickup was empty, driver's door hanging open. The keys were still in the ignition. Tom looked inside. Fast food wrappers covered the floor, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The seats were worn through. The steering wheel was polished smooth by countless hands. Moss was growing on the dashboard. Tom backed away from the pickup. How long had it been here? Months? Years? He got back in his truck and carefully maneuvered around the abandoned vehicle. Continuing up the road, his CB crackled periodically with transmissions. Sometimes a gravelly-voiced driver, offering cryptic advice. Don't stop moving. Don't look at the trees too long. If you see a side road, don't take it. Sometimes other voices, panicked, desperate, begging for help. Around midnight, Tom passed another abandoned vehicle. This one, a semi-truck similar to his own, jackknifed across the road, its trailer crushed and broken. Tom had to drive partially off the road to get around it, his wheels slipping in muddy soil. As he passed, his headlights illuminated the cab. There was a driver inside, slumped over the wheel. Tom stopped and shined his flashlight at the figure. The driver's head turned slowly, and Tom saw a face that was wrong. Skin gray and stretched, eyes empty and black. Tom gunned his engine and got out of there fast. The night wore on. Tom drove and drove, the road seeming to stretch endlessly ahead. He burned through a quarter tank of fuel, which should have taken him hundreds of miles on the highway, but he seemed no closer to any destination. The forest around him grew stranger. The trees developed impossible geometries, trunks that spiraled, branches that grew in fractal patterns, roots that arched over the road like cathedral vaults. Tom tried not to look at them too closely, remembering the gravelly voice's warning. Around 3 a.m., Tom's headlights picked out something ahead that made his heart leap. A fork in the road. One path continued up into darkness. The other branch left, heading downward. There was a sign at the fork, weathered and old. Tom stopped and got out to read it. The sign had 2 arrows. The upward path was labeled Summit. The downward path had no label, just a blank piece of wood. Tom grabbed his CB. "I'm at a fork. There's a sign. Which way do I go?" The gravelly voice answered immediately. "Describe it." Tom described the sign and the 2 paths. "Take the unmarked one," the voice said. "The labeled paths are traps. They promise destinations but never deliver. The blank ones, the ones that don't promise anything, those are the exits. Sometimes." Tom got back in his truck and took the unmarked path. It descended steeply, and Tom had to ride his brakes to keep the heavy load under control. The forest thinned. Tom could see sky ahead, lighter than the darkness under canopy. Hope surged in his chest. The road leveled out and emerged onto, Tom couldn't believe it, a paved highway. It was Highway 35, one of the main routes around Mount Hood. Normal. Real. Tom pulled onto the highway and drove south, watching his odometer and clock carefully. They behaved normally now. A mile took a minute at 60 miles per hour. Time passed at the correct rate. Tom pulled into the first truck stop he saw and parked. He sat in his cab, shaking with relief and exhaustion. Tom checked his phone. 27 missed calls from the logging company, from the mill, from his wife. He called his wife first. "Tom, oh my God, where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for 3 days." 3 days? Tom asked. "I've been gone for 1 night." "Tom, you left on October 31st. It's November 3rd. The logging company reported you missing. The Forest Service has been searching for you." Tom looked at his phone's date. November 3rd, 2020. He'd lost 3 days on that road, though it felt like only 1 night. Tom told his wife he was okay. that his phone had died and he'd gotten lost on back roads. He'd explain better when he got home. He ended the call and sat there, trying to process what had happened. His CB radio crackled. "You made it out." The gravelly voice. "Congratulations. Not many do." "Who are you?" Tom asked. "Were you ever on that road, or are you—" "I'm something that exists on the road now. I was a driver once. Long time ago. 67 years by outside counting. I've been on the gravel road for 67 years. I never found an exit, but I can help others find theirs. It's all I have left." "I'm sorry," Tom said, and meant it. "Don't be. I made my choices. But take some advice. Don't ever go looking for that road again. Don't try to find it. Don't tell people about it. It has a way of calling people back. People who know about it, who remember it. If you forget, you'll be safe." Tom tried to forget. He quit logging work and took a job driving local deliveries in Portland. He never went back into the mountains, but he couldn't completely forget. The memories stayed vivid. The endless road, the impossible trees, the abandoned vehicles with their long-dead drivers. And sometimes, late at night, Tom's CB radio would crackle to life even though his truck was parked and powered off. He'd hear that gravelly voice, still here, still driving, still looking for the way out. Tom keeps that radio in his garage now, unplugged and powered down, but it still activates sometimes, delivering messages from the gravel road. And sometimes Tom hears other voices. The young man he'd first heard, still begging for help. New voices too, other drivers who found themselves on that impossible road. Tom doesn't answer anymore. He learned that communicating with the road strengthens its connection to you. But he listens, and he wonders how many roads like that exist, scattered through the mountains and forests of America. How many drivers are trapped in those between spaces, driving forever through impossible geography, searching for exits that may not exist. Tom doesn't know, but he knows he was lucky. He found an unmarked path, a blank sign that led to freedom. Others aren't so fortunate. And on foggy October nights, when the conditions are similar to that day he took the gravel road, Tom sometimes feels a pull, an urge to drive into the mountains, to look for that turnoff at mile marker 23, to see if the road is still there, still calling, still trapping unwary drivers in its endless loop. Tom resists the urge, but it's getting harder, because part of him never left that road. Part of him is still driving through the darkness under those impossible trees, searching for an exit that remains always just ahead, always out of reach. Story 9, The Passenger Manifest. Lucia Martinez had been driving passenger buses for 15 years before she got her CDL and switched to freight. She liked the change. Cargo didn't complain, didn't ask questions, didn't leave messes. But on the night of December 19th, 2021, Lucia took a load that made her wish she'd stayed with passengers, at least with people you knew what you were hauling. On that winter night, Lucia learned that some cargo is better left undelivered. Lucia was running for a small freight company out of Dallas, Texas, hauling a mixed load to Memphis, Tennessee. The manifest listed the cargo as estate goods and personal effects. The trailer had been preloaded when Lucia arrived to pick it up, sealed and ready to go. It was 7 p.m. when she left Dallas, expecting to reach Memphis by 8 a.m. the next morning with a fuel and rest stop somewhere in Arkansas. The December evening was cold and clear, traffic light on Interstate 30. Around midnight, Lucia stopped at a travel plaza outside of Texarkana. She fueled up, grabbed coffee and a sandwich, and did her walk-around inspection. Everything looked normal. The bolt seals on her trailer were intact. Her truck was running well. Lucia climbed back into her cab, ready for the second half of her drive. That's when she noticed a notebook on her passenger seat. Lucia frowned. She hadn't left a notebook there. She always kept her cab neat, with specific places for her logbook, paperwork, and personal items. This notebook was small, spiral-bound, with a plain black cover. Lucia picked it up and opened it. The first page had writing in neat, precise handwriting. Passenger manifest, December 19th, 2021. Below there was a list of names: Jennifer Kowalski, Robert Chin, Sarah Mitchell, Thomas Alvarez, Emma Valdez, Marcus Webb. Lucia flipped through the notebook. It was full of names, maybe 50 of them, each with a date. Some dates were recent, within the past few months. Others were older, going back years. At the bottom of each page was notation: delivered or incomplete. Lucia had no idea what the notebook meant or where it come from. She was about to toss it when her eye caught one of the names: Marcus Webb. That name was familiar. Where had she heard it? Then Lucia remembered. Marcus Webb had been a driver for a different company. Someone Lucia had met at a truck stop a few months ago. They'd shared a meal and swapped stories. Marcus had told her about a weird experience he'd had on Interstate 80. Something about a truck that followed him. Lucia had laughed it off as road fatigue, but she later heard that Marcus had quit driving suddenly, just walked away from his truck one day and never came back. Lucia stared at the notebook, a chill running down her spine. Marcus's name was in this notebook, dated 3 months ago, with the notation incomplete. Lucia's phone rang, making her jump. A known number. She answered. "Hello, Ms. Martinez?" A man's voice, formal and cold. "This is Lucia." "Who's calling?" "You have something that belongs to us. The notebook. We need it back." Lucia's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this? How did you get my number?" "The notebook is not for drivers. It's for passengers. Please leave it at the truck stop. Someone will collect it." "What is this notebook? What do these names mean?" Silence for a moment, then, "They're people who've taken certain roads, Ms. Martinez. People who've encountered things they shouldn't have. The notebook tracks them, ensures they complete their journeys." "Complete their journeys to where?" "That's not your concern. Leave the notebook. Continue your delivery. Don't look inside your trailer. If you do these things, you'll be fine." The call ended. Lucia sat there, her heart pounding. Every instinct told her to leave the notebook, forget about it, and just drive to Memphis. But she couldn't. Something about those names, about Marcus's name being listed with a notation incomplete, made it personal. Lucia opened the notebook again and found her own name. It was on the most recent page. Lucia Martinez, December 19th, 2021. Below it was incomplete. Lucia's blood ran cold. She looked at the other names on her page. 6 names total, all dated today. All marked incomplete. What did it mean? Lucia flipped back to the notebook, looking for any name marked delivered. She found one. Jennifer Kowalski, May 3rd, 2021, delivered. Lucia pulled out her phone and searched the name. A news article came up. Truck driver Jennifer Kowalski found dead in her cab outside Memphis, Tennessee. Cause of death undetermined. Lucia searched other names. Each one marked delivered led to a news article about a driver who died. Accidents, mysterious deaths, disappearances. The names marked incomplete led to stories of drivers who quit suddenly, had breakdowns, went missing temporarily. Lucia realized what she was looking at. This was a list of targets. People who were supposed to die or disappear or something worse. And she was on the list. Lucia's first impulse was to call the police. But what would she tell them? She had a notebook with names in it. They'd think she was crazy or involved in something criminal. Lucia started her truck and pulled out of the travel plaza. She needed to think, to figure out what to do. As she merged back onto the interstate, her CB radio crackled. Lucia Martinez. The voice was wrong, distorted, like multiple people speaking in unison. "You were told to leave the notebook." "Who are you?" Lucia demanded. We are the passengers, the ones you're carrying, and we're very displeased. Lucia's eyes went to her mirrors, to the sealed trailer behind her. You're my trailer? We've always been in your trailer, from the moment you picked up the load in Dallas. Estate goods and personal effects. That's what your manifest says. It's not wrong. We are the effects of estates. The remnants, the things left behind when people die. Lucia felt her sanity slipping. This isn't real. I'm hallucinating. Look in your trailer if you don't believe us. The seals are intact. Seals only stop physical intrusions, Lucia. Not every door requires breaking a lock. Against her better judgment, against every rule she knew, Lucia pulled onto the shoulder. She grabbed her flashlight and bolt cutters and walked back to the trailer. The seals were intact, but Lucia cut them anyway. She needed to see, needed to know. She threw open the doors. The trailer was full of furniture, boxes, and personal items, just like the manifest said. But sitting on the furniture, standing between the boxes, were people. 6 people, translucent and glowing faintly in the darkness. Lucia recognized one of them, Jennifer Kowalski, the driver who died. The others were strangers, but they all had the same empty, haunted eyes. You see us now, Jennifer said, her voice echoing. You shouldn't have looked. Lucia stumbled back, falling off the trailer onto the pavement. The figures didn't move from the trailer, but they watched her. What do you want? Lucia gasped. To be delivered. Jennifer said, We're incomplete. We died on the road, but our journeys weren't finished. So we ride with drivers, trying to reach our destinations. But sometimes the drivers resist. Sometimes they run. And then we can't complete our journey. Marcus Webb, Lucia said. He's on the list. Incomplete. Marcus saw us. Jennifer said. He opened his trailer, like he just did. He ran, and we couldn't complete our journey through him. So we wait for another driver, another chance. You're our chance, Lucia. All 6 of us. Take us to Memphis. Let us finish what we started. And if I refuse? Lucia asked. The figure smiled, and the expression was terrible. Then you become like us. Incomplete. Forever. Lucia ran back to her cab and locked the doors. She grabbed the CB. Help! Someone help me. But the radio only produced that distorted multi-voice. No one can help you, Lucia. You're on our road now. The road of the incomplete. Either you finish our journey, or you join us. Lucia threw the CB microphone down. She looked at the notebook, at her name with the notation incomplete. She understood now. The notebook tracked people who'd encountered the passengers, the ghost cargo. Those marked delivered had completed the journey and died doing it. Those marked incomplete had escaped, but at the cost of their sanity or their lives eventually catching up to them. Lucia had a choice. She could continue to Memphis, let the passengers complete their journey, and likely die when they were delivered. Or she could run, abandon her truck, and spend the rest of her life marked as incomplete. Knowing the passengers would find another driver and try again, Lucia looked in her mirrors at the open trailer. The 6 figures stood at the edge, watching her, waiting. Lucia made her decision. She got out of her truck, walked back to the trailer, and looked at the passengers. I'll take you to Memphis, she said. But I want answers. Why me? Why these names? You were in the right place at the right time, Jennifer said. Or the wrong place. The roads choose the drivers as much as drivers choose the roads. You've driven past our signs, our markers. You've slept in places where we died. You've established a connection, even if you didn't know it. Now the connection is complete, and we can ride with you. What happens when we reach Memphis? Lucia asked. Jennifer's expression was almost pitying. We get out. You continue. Maybe you survive. Some drivers do. Lucia closed and resealed the trailer doors. She got back in her cab and drove. The rest of the journey to Memphis was quiet. The passengers didn't speak, didn't manifest, stayed in the trailer. But Lucia could feel them, their presence like a weight pressing on her mind. She drove through the remainder of the night, watching the sun rise over Arkansas, cold and pale. She crossed into Tennessee. Memphis appeared ahead, the city's skyline visible in the morning light. The delivery address was a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Lucia pulled in just after 8 a.m., her scheduled arrival time. Workers came out and directed her to a bay. They broke the seals and opened her trailer. Lucia watched in her mirrors as they unloaded the furniture and boxes. She saw the 6 figures, the passengers, step down from the trailer. They stood for a moment in the warehouse bay, looking around as if remembering something. Then, one by one, they faded, dissolving into the morning light. Gone. Delivered. Lucia signed the paperwork and left. She drove out of Memphis in her empty trailer, heading back to Dallas. She felt different, lighter, but also hollow, like something had been taken from her. She stopped at a rest area and checked the notebook. Her name was still there, Lucia Martinez, December 19th, 2021. But now it said delivered. Lucia stared at the notation. She'd survived. She delivered the passengers and was still alive. But the word delivered didn't feel like a victory. Over the next few weeks, Lucia noticed changes. She felt cold all the time, even in her heated truck. Food had no taste. Colors seemed washed out, faded. She went to doctors, but they found nothing wrong. Lucia realized the truth slowly. The passengers had been delivered. Yes, but delivery worked both ways. In completing their journey, she'd become a little bit like them, caught between the living world and whatever realm they'd come from. Lucia was now marked permanently as someone who'd carried the dead. Lucia still drives. She has to. Something compels her to keep moving, keep traveling the roads. And sometimes when she picks up a new load, she'll find a passenger in her trailer, a translucent figure, sitting quietly among the cargo, waiting to be delivered. Lucia doesn't run anymore. She just drives them where they need to go. Because she understands now. She's become a ferry for the incomplete, the drivers and passengers who died with journeys unfinished. She transports them to their destinations, helps them find peace. It's her purpose now. The road chose her and she accepted. Some drivers haul freight, some haul people. Lucia Martinez hauls ghosts, and she'll keep driving until her own journey is complete and someone else takes the wheel. Story 10. The Highway That Remembers. Patrick Sullivan had been hauling freight for 31 years, one of the old-timers who'd started when logbooks were still paper and GPS was a fantasy. At 64 years old, Patrick was considering retirement, maybe 1 or 2 more years, and then he'd hang up his keys. On the night of April 7, 2022, Patrick took what should have been a routine run from Omaha, Nebraska, to Kansas City, Missouri, and discovered that some highways don't just connect places. They remember things, store them, replay them like recordings. And sometimes those recordings include the future. Patrick picked up his load at 5 p.m., a trailer of agricultural equipment bound for a dealer in Kansas City. The weather was perfect, spring evening with clear skies and mild temperatures. Patrick merged onto Interstate 29 South and settled in for the 4-hour drive. The highway was familiar. Patrick had driven 2,900 of times over his career. He knew every exit, every truck stop, every quirk of the road. Or he thought he did. Around mile marker 75, just north of the Iowa-Missouri state line, Patrick noticed something odd. The highway ahead of him looked wrong. Somehow, the pavement was darker, the lane markings brighter white, and there were more cars than there should be for a Thursday evening. Patrick blinked, and the highway was normal again, old pavement, faded markings, light traffic. Patrick shook his head, figuring his eyes were playing tricks. A minute later, it happened again. The highway ahead shimmered like a heat mirage, and suddenly Patrick was seeing a different version of the road. This time there were more differences. The cars were older models, boxy sedans from the 1990s. A truck passed going the opposite direction, a model that hadn't been manufactured in 20 years. Patrick watched it go by, his skin prickling. Then the shimmer effect happened again, and the highway returned to normal. Patrick grabbed his CB radio. This is veteran driver on 29 southbound near mile marker 74. Anyone else seeing weird stuff? Like the road changing? A voice crackled back immediately. Changing how? Like different eras. Old cars, different pavement. It's like looking through a window to a different time. A pause, then, "Brother, I think you need to pull over and get some rest. You might be having a stroke or something." Patrick knew he wasn't having a stroke. He felt fine, no weakness, no confusion, no other symptoms. But the highway kept shifting. Every minute or so, it would shimmer and change, showing Patrick different versions of itself. Sometimes it looked new, the pavement fresh and perfect. Sometimes it looked ancient, cracked, and potholed. The cars around him changed too. Sometimes modern vehicles, sometimes classics from decades past. Once even horse-drawn wagons on a dirt track. Patrick realized what he was seeing. The highway was showing him its history, all the different states it had existed in over the years. The dirt track before it was paved, the narrow two-lane road it had been originally, the modern four-lane interstate it had become. Patrick was seeing all these versions overlaid, like transparent images stacked on top of each other. And occasionally, the images became solid, real enough to see in detail. Then Patrick saw something that made his blood run cold. In one of the shimmers, the highway ahead showed a massive pileup. Dozens of cars and trucks crashed and burning. Emergency vehicles everywhere, chaos and destruction. Patrick could see bodies covered with sheets. He could see firefighters spraying foam on burning vehicles. The vision lasted maybe 5 seconds, then shimmered away. The highway ahead was clear and empty in the present. Patrick checked his odometer and mile marker. The vision of the pileup had been near mile marker 68. Patrick made a note. He continued driving, but now he was paying close attention to the shimmers, trying to understand what they were showing him. Most were clearly the past, old cars, old road configurations, but some might be the future. How would he know? Another shimmer, this one lasting longer. The highway showed evening light. Similar to the current time, Patrick saw his own truck in the vision, driving in the right lane. Then, from an on-ramp, a car emerged, a red sedan. The car merged directly into the space Patrick's truck occupied. The collision was catastrophic. Patrick's truck jackknifed it, the trailer swinging around and across all lanes. Other vehicles crashed into it. In seconds, it became a multi-vehicle disaster. Patrick watched himself die, his cab crushed by other trucks. The shimmer ended. Patrick was shaking. The highway was clear, and the on-ramp the red sedan had come from was about half a mile ahead. Patrick moved to the left lane, giving wide space to any merging traffic. As he passed the on-ramp, he watched carefully. No red sedan. No car at all. The ramp was empty. Patrick exhaled slowly. Had he just seen a possible future? A future he'd avoided by changing lanes? The shimmers continued. Patrick saw more visions, some clearly the past, others ambiguous. He saw a truck identical to his own, in the same location, hauling similar cargo. He saw himself, or someone who looked exactly like him, driving the same stretch of highway. The vision Patrick waved to him, an eerie greeting across time. Patrick didn't wave back, too unnerved. Then the visions changed. Instead of showing him the highway, they started showing him things that happened near the highway. Patrick saw a farmhouse burning, firefighters unable to save it. The shimmer placed a location to his right, maybe a mile off the interstate. Patrick looked. In the present, There was no fire, just dark fields. Patrick noted the location. He'd check news reports later, see if a fire had happened there in the past or would happen in the future. More visions. A child wandering lost in a cornfield, calling for her mother. A car accident on a side road. A man digging a grave in a wooded area. Moonlight illuminating his furtive movements. The visions came faster now, overlapping, showing Patrick a cascade of events connected to this highway. Some mundane, some tragic, some sinister. The highway remembered everything that happened along its length, and for some reason, it was showing all of it to Patrick. Patrick pulled off at the next rest area. Needing a break from the visions, he parked and sat in his cab, trying to make sense of what was happening. His CB crackled. Patrick Sullivan. Patrick grabbed the microphone. Who is this? The highway knows your name, Patrick. It knows every name of every driver who's traveled it. You've driven this road for 31 years. The highway remembers. Were you? Patrick asked. I'm what the highway creates from all its memories. A kind of intelligence, built from millions of journeys, millions of events. I exist in the pavement, in the mile markers, in the white lines. I am the road, Patrick, and I wanted to talk to you. Why me? Because you're leaving. You're going to retire. After 31 years of traveling me, feeding me your experiences, you're going to stop. I wanted to show you what you've been part of, the continuum of events, past and future, that make up my existence. Patrick's mind struggled to process this. You're saying the highway is alive? Aware might be a better word. I accumulate experiences, store them, replay them, and occasionally, with certain drivers, I communicate. You're one of those drivers, Patrick. You've been sensitive to me for years, though you didn't realize it. The way you always know where the speed traps are, the way you can feel when weather's coming. That's me, communicating in subtle ways. The visions, Patrick said. The past I understand. But the future? How can you show me things that haven't happened? The highway exists in 4 dimensions, Patrick. To you, moving through space over time, events seem sequential. To me, existing in space across time, I perceive it all simultaneously. Past and future are just directions along my length. I see the car crash at mile marker 68 because, from my perspective, it has already happened, even if your linear experience hasn't reached it yet. Patrick thought about the pileup he'd seen, the red sedan merging into his truck. Did I change the future by moving lanes? You change your future. The collision exists in a branch of possibility. You traveled a different branch by moving, but somewhere in the probability space I perceive, that collision happened. Someone died there, some version of you, in some version of now. Patrick shuddered. Why are you telling me this? What do you want? I want you to remember, the voice said. Humans travel through me so quickly, seeing only the immediate moment. They don't appreciate the depth, the layers of history and possibility that every mile contains. Before you retire, before you leave my path forever, I wanted you to see, to understand. The highway is more than asphalt. It's a repository of experience, a record of every journey. And you've been part of that record for 3 decades. The radio went silent. Patrick sat in his truck, processing everything. Then he started his engine and pulled back onto the interstate. The visions continued. Flickers of past and future, ghosts and possibilities overlaid on the present. But Patrick viewed them differently now, not as threats or hallucinations, but as glimpses into the deep history of the road he'd traveled for most of his adult life. He was seeing the full truth of the highway, all its layers revealed. Patrick delivered his load to Kansas City without incident. The pileup he'd seen in the vision never happened, not on that night. But 2 days later, Patrick saw a news report. A massive accident on Interstate 29 near mile marker 68. 20 vehicles involved. 3 fatalities. The accident had happened during a freak fog that appeared suddenly. Patrick stared at the news footage. He recognized the configuration of crashed vehicles. It was a vision he'd seen, played out exactly. Patrick retired 3 months later. He sold his truck and settled into a quiet life in Omaha. But he never stopped thinking about that night, about the highway that remembered. Sometimes Patrick drives 29 in his personal car, just short trips. And sometimes he still sees the shimmers, brief glimpses of other times overlaid on the present. He sees himself in his truck, younger, driving north with a load. He sees his own future sometimes, an old man in a car, traveling to visit family. The highway still remembers him, still shows him its secrets. Patrick wonders sometimes how many other drivers are sensitive to it. How many see the visions but dismiss them as fatigue or imagination? He wonders if the highway communicates with all of them in subtle ways, guiding and protecting. Patrick likes to think so. He likes to think that the millions of miles of American highway are all aware in their own way, storing every journey, every event, creating a vast network of memory that spans a continent. And maybe, just maybe, that awareness cares about the drivers who travel it, keeps them safe when it can, shows them warnings when danger approaches. Patrick can't prove it, but he believes it because he spoke to the highway and it spoke back. And that changes everything. The road is more than just a path from one place to another. It's alive, aware, remembering. And every driver is part of its story, forever.